It has been almost 4 years since the last Apple TV update. According to Mac Rumors, over 1,200 days, and the HomePod Mini even longer at 2,000. But on the last episode of Primary Tech, Jason asked me this.
What does it need to be upgraded?
I want it upgraded. It could always be faster. And I was not prepared with a good answer. But since then, I think I've had a fever dream. For years, Apple has sold multiple models of the Apple TV 4K, and their differences are always strange. Like right now, you can get the Wi-Fi version for $129 or Wi-Fi and Ethernet for $20 more. It's double the storage, but an even bigger difference between those two models if you're trying to get into smart home, the more expensive model has Thread, one of the key elements of a modern smart home setup. And in the past, there's always been arbitrary differences between those Apple TV models. So I think I got an idea. Rather than just one or even two Apple TV models, what if there were three? What if there was an even cheaper base model Apple TV to actually compete with other streaming sticks? Then there could be a legitimate mid-tier option with things like actual Find My and the remote that can make a sound, and some other features I'm going to suggest should come back to Apple TV. And then what if there was an Apple TV 4K Pro? What possible features would people pay extra for? Let's say Apple's announcing 3 brand new Apple TVs, and the first one is actually made to compete with all the other sticks out there. Maybe we call it the Apple TV Neo. Like the Amazon Fire Sticks, it would be amazing and competitive if Apple made it like $49. It'll probably be more expensive than that, but it can still be competitive even if a little more expensive. Right now, an Amazon Fire Stick 4K is about $30. Yes, it's on sale sometimes for as low as $20. The Roku Stick, about the same price. And yes, a lot of smart TVs have these features built in. But with an Apple TV Neo Stick, it could be great for travel. You would have AirPlay and screen mirroring, all the features of the bigger Apple TVs. And if they upgrade certain apps like the Podcasts app, then you could have video podcasts from Apple directly on the stick. Give it the latest wireless, because right now the Apple TV still has Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5, so make that Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6. Maybe leave out Thread for this base model, but update it from the A15 to either the 16 or maybe even the 19 to future-proof it. And if Apple really wants to increase the margin, maybe sell this stick without a physical remote. Now I know that seems wild, but Apple TV sells a Mac Mini without a keyboard and mouse, and you can use your iPhone or iPad as a remote for the Apple TV. And they could easily just make an Android app if someone wants an Apple TV but has an Android phone to be able to use the Apple TV remote and set it up by using your phone to do things like log in, control the interface, and more. Now I'll be honest, they're probably not going to make a TV stick, but how could they upgrade the mid-range or base model Apple TV so it's actually worth it? Now what could Apple update in the latest Apple TV 4K? Well, number one, let's update the storage, at the very least 128, if not a 256 gig SSD. Let's put Ethernet on every Apple TV 4K, and let's finally put Find My in the Apple TV remote. Right now, you can do the whole Find remote for the latest Apple TV remotes, and if you're in proximity, it'll tell you how near it is and when you're right next to it. But it does not let you ping the remote with a sound or give you that arrow on screen like an AirTag with ultra-wideband chip. So put legitimate Find My in this, or at least put a little speaker in the remote so you can make it ping when it's in the sofa cushions. This has been my hack forever. I got this cheap silicone case on Amazon and I literally put an AirTag in there. Let's update the wireless. So Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, put Thread in every larger Apple TV box. This way, if anyone's trying to start a smart home, they have the right connectivity in the box. Which, by the way, if you wanted to learn how to completely set up an Apple smart home from scratch, I have a complete getting started guide for beginners. I'll link that above, or you can scan this QR code. But this way, the Apple TV box with the remote has all the wireless standards, upgraded to the A19 or maybe even the A19 Pro chip. There's lots of new Apple Arcade games that have come out since this last model of Apple TV, so make it more powerful and maybe even make it closer to a gaming option for people. But here's where I'm going to go off a little bit. I think Apple should add one more thing to this mid-tier or new Apple TV. Make it $150, maybe even $175, but add a USB-C port. Right now we have Ethernet, HDMI, and power. But if you remember the very first generation Apple TV, which Steve Jobs literally called iTV on stage and said it was a code name, you'll see there's a ton of ports. Obviously we needed different video and audio connectors back then, but there's an HDMI and a USB port. Now, why should Apple put a USB port on the Apple TV? But stay with me. I think Apple should add the ability to connect webcams to the Apple TV. Here's why. Yes, you can use your iPhone in continuity mode with your Apple TV for things like FaceTime and video conferences. But I've been in many conference rooms where there was an Apple TV and someone ends up trying to screen mirror their computer to the Apple TV, or someone has to give up their iPhone for the whole meeting and they have to figure out how to set it up, scan the QR code if they're not logged into the iCloud account, which if it's a conference room Apple TV, they're probably not logged into the same iCloud. Apple could make the conference room experience way easier and better, and for all the grandparents out there who want to be able to FaceTime from their TV. Apple would not be the first company just doing this in the last year. Nintendo actually released an entire webcam for the Nintendo Switch 2. And I know from talking to lots of podcast creators that people who are not ready to go up to a mirrorless camera, they really want a good webcam. And there are some great options out there. Brands like the Opal camera with their 4K and tadpole, and cameras like the Ozbot, they're making fairly inexpensive, too expensive, high-quality webcams for the computer. So I'm just going to say it. I think Apple should bring the iSight back. Now, yes, the camera in the new Studio display has been vastly improved, but for all the people with a Mac Mini or someone who just wants a really good webcam, maybe from Apple, I think they should bring it back. And yes, if you didn't know, Apple did make its own webcam called the iSight. In this iconic photo, Steve Jobs' desk, there's literally an iSight right here on top of the display. Apple could market it as a high-quality 4K webcam with a high-quality microphone, and it can just be set up in conference rooms or grandparents' houses all the time, ready to video call and FaceTime. And an Apple webcam could actually be used in more places than just the Apple TV. If you were to actually go to the FaceTime app on your iPad, iPadOS 26, and even 18 before it, you can actually connect many webcams to your iPad, and as you'll see, webcams just work. It works with the Ozbot, the Opal, Logitech StreamCam, and a bunch of others. And Apple has been doing a lot of features and software updates geared toward creators specifically. We got local recording with iPadOS 26. You can manually choose your mic input on iPhone and iPad. So while Apple has been catering to the podcasters and creators on that audio side, and of course, we get great video from the iPhone, the ability to have a high-quality 4K webcam that you can connect to your iPad, your Apple TV, or other devices, and this would allow Apple to maybe start touching on that streamer content creator as well as podcasters and video. So mid-range Apple TV 4K, $150 to $180, up the storage, have gigabit Ethernet and Thread in all of the models, and a USB-C port for adding a webcam, either Apple's own first-party webcam or third parties. But what if Apple went one step further and made an Apple TV 4K Pro? What could possibly justify an even larger device, more expensive than the mid-range Apple TV, maybe something all the way up to $299, or knowing Apple might be even higher. Now I know I'm going out on a limb here, but what if Apple made a larger Apple TV 4K Pro with that higher-end chip, more storage, maybe 1 to 2 terabytes, put a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, an M3, M4, maybe even M5 chip, and, get ready, an HDMI input capture port. I know that sounds wild, but more and more brands are making things specifically for streamers, and Elgato recently announced something like this, the Wave XLR Pro. Now this is a really cool device made specifically for streamers, got the headphone jacks on the front, and on the back a place for an XLR microphone, computer speakers, and then 2 USB-C ports. One for the gaming PC or the console that you're actually streaming, and then another for the streaming PC. Now I don't have this device, but I did help my son set up his gaming PC for streaming, and it took having a Mac Mini, an Elgato capture device, his gaming PC, an audio interface, and a bunch of other gear. This Elgato device would make that way easier, but Apple TV can make a play for this too. If you had a powerful enough chip and an HDMI input, this could be a game streaming device. And if it had that USB-C port for webcams or maybe even Apple's own first-party iSight, you can have a high-quality camera and microphone connected directly to the Apple TV, have your game console or gaming PC in the HDMI in port, and then make an app, maybe partner with OBS or something where you can stream to Twitch and YouTube directly from your Apple TV. And now this can be a streamer's content box all in one. Now I know that's a long shot, but one other thing Apple can add to this Pro level Apple TV is something that was also in the original first-gen Apple TV. That is the ability to store content locally. It only had a 40 gig or 160 gig hard drive, which is wild. But if Apple could afford, with all the SSD prices, to put a 1 or 2 terabyte SSD in here, that means those who are willing to pay the premium for the most expensive Apple TV could choose to maybe pay a premium through the Apple TV movie library to download high bitrate movies locally to the device and play it at the highest quality possible. Now, I recently got a new OLED TV and I did a whole video about that and some other smart home upgrades. I'll link it above. But once you start watching streaming content on a really high quality TV, it does beg the question, is this streaming content really the best looking thing I can put on here? And after hearing Nilay Patel talk on the Vergecast about his wild setup that was sent to him to play uncompressed video and audio.
It is the single most incredible experience I've ever had watching a movie in my entire life. I've never been so happy. If you don't know what a Kaleidoscape is, it is the single highest bitrate movie streamer you can get.
I want to be able to do that too, but that setup, as Nilay described, was like over $13,000. What if Apple sold versions of its movies for $40, maybe even $50, and let you download 10 to 20 of those movies on the Apple TV 4K Pro for the highest quality video and audio experience possible with an Apple box. I fully admit that would probably never happen, but I think it would be pretty cool. And while most people will go for the streaming stick or maybe even the mid-range Apple TV with the gigabit Ethernet port and thread and just wanting the actual box, and maybe wanting to find my in their Apple TV remote, the enthusiasts, maybe content creators, and those willing to pay a premium for the actual hardware might also pay a premium for the content at a premium quality. Listen, Apple's trying to increase their services revenue. They can increase by selling those more expensive quality movies, sell a more expensive version of the Apple TV specifically geared towards streamers, put a video capture device built into there, or just the ability to connect any webcam. I will go for the Apple TV 4K Pro if that was a thing that existed. Now, I realize a lot of the features I just mentioned will probably never happen, but I just wanted to speak them out there because they actually felt like legitimate upgrades and places the Apple TV could go rather than just upping the processor and putting Wi-Fi 7 in there. That might be all that we see, and plus a smarter voice assistant once Gemini powers you-know-who on Apple TV and all the other Apple devices. But I think Apple could do a lot more with this box, target the lower end with a stick version, keep doing that middle-of-the-range Apple TV that most people will get, and then even go for that higher end, catering to more content creators, specifically streamers, and for those who want really high-quality video and audio movies from their box. I don't know, I just wanted to get all of that out there. Let me know what you think down in the comments, if this is absolutely insane or if this might have a place to go. Would you get an eyesight camera? I feel like I would get one for my mom. This way she could FaceTime from her TV and not have to struggle holding the phone and figure out how to do continuity camera. I don't know, I think that'd be great. So let me know down in the comments. I'll put my getting started with smart home guide here and my last 5 things I upgraded and 3 regrets that I have from recent upgrades. That video's right here. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. And thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.